Welcome back to artofdino.com, and this is some cool news linked with some old articles that I have found. If you are a fan of this channel, you know that I am a firm believer that the land beyond the poles in both directions, and possibly every direction, is packed with land aplenty, probably billions of miles worth of extra land that we are kept in the dark about and completely silent about. The ancients knew about it. We have been told to know nothing about it and have been stopped from seeing it, knowing about it, everything. But we feel it in our hearts and we know it's the case. And so I wanted to combine two different things today, because if you've been looking at the news around Japan, you saw that Japan just recently discovered up to 7,000 new islands within their region. 7,000! Now that's more than I think a volcano could produce in, say, a few years since their survey, or 20 years since their survey. And it's a sign of something. I think it's a sign of a release that's coming out soon. This is how it is. They slowly leak out this thought process that there's more land out there. People are still discovering things. Not 7 islands, 7,000 islands. And I'm not sure what the size is, the maps. I'll probably go into that later in another video when more information comes out. But pretty ridiculous, and I find it very interesting because this is what we know is occurring. Newly discovered island is the closest land to the North Pole, alright? They keep finding stuff up there that's newer and newer, and they know all of this stuff already. They've flown it, they've done satellite things, balloons above it, they've done everything above it. They know it to a certain extent. I wonder where their knowledge stops, but someone knows, they know, we're not led in the circus. So we got to kind of theorize. And so this is in connection to a 1775 article that, again, I found in the Pennsylvania Magazine. Both of these things pretty much coincided on the same day, me finding this article with that. And it's the Russians finding new islands off of Kamchatka in Adair. So, very interesting read considering what has just happened in our time, too. These things are still happening, whether we like it or not, and whether it's actual news or just programming, deliberate, and just slow release of information that is already out there by some people that aren't letting us into the club. But here we go. I want to read this article because I think it's very interesting and it's got cool connections. So check out some old art, some articles about this modern find, and all this kind of good stuff that connects 1776 and before to the present moment. So here we go. This is on page 39 of the link that I'll put below. An account of the new northern archipelago lately discovered by the Russians in the seas of Kamchatka and Adair by Mr. J. von Steichlen, translated from the German. Here we go. It says, every new step towards a more perfect investigation of the globe must certainly be interesting. To England will probably be reserved the glory of having ascertained the eternal boundaries of navigation. To Russia, that of having discovered the true connection between the ancient and new world. That is a line worth a billion words. I'll read it one more time. To Russians, that of having discovered the true connection between the ancient and new world. Is that why Russians are supposedly hated and warred against right now? Because they're trying to release that? Strange how little changes in several hundred years. Dr. Mady, who furnished the original of this account of the new northern archipelago, justly observes that the accounts hitherto published of these northern expeditions tend to improve our geographical notions of the passage from one continent to the other. It appears that the intermediate space between Asia and America from the 40th to the 70th degree is occupied by clusters of islands within sight of, or at least as small distances from one another. And it is still uncertain whether the last coast discovered by the Russians, and by them called the Great Continent, or Stachtan-Nitada, gotta look up that, definitely, belong to the mainland or be divided from it by the other straits. The success which these Argonauts have hitherto had in their navigations give us little room to suspect that this will continue a problem much longer. If in the British colonies the same spirit of curiosity and perhaps interest should animate the inhabitants, the communication of the two continents will soon be followed by that of the two seas, and we may hope to see the globe nearly encircled by two nations. Naturalists and perhaps antiquarians will be no less useful than astronomers in these extensive researches. From the difference in the make, dress, and manners of the new discovered islanders, we might be induced to suspect that the most northerly parts of the New World were peopled by the most savage Asiatic Tartars, or Chukchi, while the inhabitants of the more moderate climates, and among them the Mexicans and Peruvians, were indebted for some part of their industry and civilization to the Tungusi Tartars, or perhaps their offspring, the Chinese and Japanese. Wow, that's a bombshell. So is that the connection between the modern Japanese and Chinese, and why America kind of has so much influence in Japan and always wanted to influence China? And the way that they're unreleasing new things now, are they even getting back to their ancient roots, their Tartarian roots and beyond? Maybe they know secrets, they're unveiling them. This is all a slow unveiling between Russia, Japan, and the truth seekers out there. But there is something here, there is no doubt. I love seeing this connection to Japan, Tibet, and all of these things that we know of in our time are still kind of suspect. So, wow, keep it going. That these nations have in ancient times navigated to North America has long been suspected, obvious. This was lately ascertained by an ingenious French author, and from the situation of the Gesso, Curly and other islands, is rendered more and more probable. Were we to trust to some late accounts, it is not impossible, but some of their descendants may still subsist in that immense continent, and not far from the same spot. Wow, very interesting. I'd like to find more about that reading in that quote, see what else is around it. But here we go. To facilitate the description of this new cluster of islands, the author hath reduced them to 3 divisions. The first contains the islands discovered by Bering and Chirikov in the Sea of Kamchatka, or Pacific Ocean, between the 50th and 56th degrees of north latitude, such as Bering's Island, Mednoy, St. Theodore, St. Abraham, St. Macarius, etc. The second comprehends the island of Olutora, over against the Gulf of that name, between the 56th and 60th degrees, together with the islands of Alusha, which lie farther southeast, discovered by the Russia Trading Company in the course of their navigation. I wonder what else they discovered. In the third, we shall reckon the islands of Anadir, that is, those discovered in the years I765 and I766, farther north, the east from the 60th to the 67th degrees of north latitude. Of these islands, we know in general and for certain that those which are situated from the 50th to the 55th degree resemble the islands of Kurili with regard to the weather, the productions of sea and land, beasts, and shellfish, as also in the figure, appearance, clothing, food, way of life, and manners of the inhabitants, whereas those from the 55th and 60th degree, which are in the islands of Olutura and Alusha maybe, are in all these particulars very like Kamchatka. The account of the islands are short but descriptive. The following particulars are worthy of our recording. Quote unquote, Kenaha is about 134 miles in circumference. Among the many high mountains on this island is a remarkable one called the Horalai Sopka, that is, the burning top, where the islanders fetch brimstone in the summer. At the foot of this mountain there are hot springs, where the inhabitants boil their meat and their fish. There are no other rivers upon this island. The low grounds are much of the same nature as in the former. It contains about 200 inhabitants of both sexes. The manner of living in these islands is thus. 1. The inhabitants of the lowlands have green huts, which they call junts, where they constantly live. They care little for warmth, so never kindle fire in their yurts all the winter. They wear no clothes but what are made with the skins of sea fowls, especially a kind of black duck called archaea and toporca, which they have the art of catching by the seaside with a sling made of whalebone. With the guts of the sea cows and sea calves, which they call kuaseha and uerpa, they sew their kamtees, or upper garments. They use nothing else for their clothing. For their common food, they are content with raw fish and mostly with what they call pastufua and other kinds of stock fish. If they are hindered from fishing by contrary winds and other kinds of from fishing by contrary winds, they live upon sea kale, Crambe litoris bunius, and sea oysters. I love sea seaweed, by the way. It's something I've been eating lately, and it's unbelievable. Here we go. In May and June, they go out to catch uerpas, sea calves, and beavers. In the depth of winter, by the severest cold, they go just as in summer, with their fish skin and bird skin upper and undergarments, without breeches, stockings, caps, or gloves. If now and then it sets in uncommonly cold, they kindle a heap of the hay of strong seagrass, and let the warmth penetrate to their feet and between their legs into the undergarment, till they are in some measure warm. Their women and children wear the same clothes as the men, but some have both the undergarments and an upper cloak made of beaver skin. They sleep with their wives in their huts, in a cellar dug in the ground, which they strew with grass, and prepared so as to make a soft bed, but have no other coverings but the clothes which they wear in the daytime. They take no manner of thought about their soul, much less about their condition after death, for they have not the least notion of a future state. And I wonder how they found that out. I'm sure they had a very nice spiritual sense that these people, this writer, could not even fathom. And the last paragraph of this section says, the narrative of the adventures of the four sailors is well drawn up and is both entertaining and instructive. They were cast away in the year I743 on the desert island of East Spitzbergen, or as some conjecture, on Bear Island, in latitude 74 degrees 41 minutes. 3 of them survived 6 years and 3 months, and then were delivered from their rueful solitude by a Russian ship driven by contrary winds directly opposite to their residence, in which, observing their signals on shore, took them on board and brought them safe to Archangel, September 28th, 1749. I749. So very interesting stuff there, and the Tartar connection is outstanding, and how they just fathom that, it's almost like they know that the land goes above, and that maybe even the Tartars are just like one of the other realms, people that are common, like the English, the American of that other realm that we're not supposed to know about, and that's why maybe it's been leaking back and coming back into knowledge. But either way, they are definitely, mainstream news is covering these islands, these new islands. And what are normies thinking? What do people think that are just like, oh, the globe, we know everything, we're the smartest, best navigators, everything's already mapped, and now all of a sudden in 2023 there's news of 7,000 more islands just in Japan's territory. How much is there beyond that? And we might have to explore this definitely in future as they come up with more details, and as I even going to go back into this article and probe those latitudes and longitudes on Google Earth, and again connect it to where we're no longer allowed to go, where the military stops us from going, all these places where discoveries were made constantly, all these places that people at one point saw so much prosperity in, so much hope and faith in, and now they're reduced to rubble and photoshopped out of our Google Earth ultimate source of whatever they want to tell us and show us our realm is. But it's not the truth. We know it. You can't just randomly find 7,000 new islands in a place that's been charted for hundreds and potentially thousands of years. It is all known. Everybody knows about it. Maybe some volcano ones would be around there, but not 7,000. I'm telling you, they are about to release some information about this. They're starting to talk about aliens being other people from other places, other times, other areas. The beyond the realm reality is coming into the mainstream very soon. Get ready for it, because we are pioneering it. We've been thinking about it a long time, and a lot of these normies haven't. So we're going to do the continuous guiding, the digging, and hopefully the exploring, because when time comes to break new ground and discover those lands for public knowledge and consumption, I hope we are all there to see it as well and experience it and meet the Tartars, because they're not going to want to meet our politicians. They're going to want to meet the pure-hearted humans that are out there thinking about this stuff, spending their time not on TikTok, but in research and thinking and imagining and creating and doing things that benefit humanity rather than just are useless and pathetic and a drain on the soul. So let's keep going. We will keep discovering. The truth is coming soon enough. And it's been going for a long time. They've been hiding it so long, but they can't hold it much longer. Let's break the boundaries and keep the knowledge flowing, keep it spreading to people, keep telling everybody about it, keep sharing, and pretty soon the masses and the collective consciousness will catch up to the reality and the truth that we deserve, the divine truth about everything, the ultimate truth. We need it for our souls to prosper. Bless you all.